So I think it's recording now. That's good. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really passionate about this topic because that is how I first got my first job in the UK when I came from Mexico 22 years ago, working in a project about women in STEM, which was obviously very, very new to me and very, very important. And obviously throughout the last 23 years, I've been still involved in a lot of things about women in STEM. This is a little bit about, assume that you all know, but if while we are presenting, if you can mute your microphones, that would be great. And of course, we have the chat, and any questions or support that you might need, please do ask us in the chat. You might want to have some paper, pen, but a lot of the statistics, we'll be able to send them to you as well as the slides after the session. So what, for some of you that do not know about Innova, our mission is to develop high quality training and educational programs to empower both individuals and organizations. But a real commitment is to embrace diversity in the field of gender, disability, race, age, and religion in order to support personal and professional development. So it's very much about making a difference to those groups or those organizations that don't have the right balance, either for different circumstances like you can see in the slide. For some of you that want to know more about our projects, we have had more than 150 projects across Europe. If you go to innovaconsult.com/projects, you can choose and filter per sector and per country. If you're interested in a specific country like Austria or Sweden or Turkey, you will be able to see a lot of our projects, all current or past. We also represent in the UK the European Association for Women in Technology, Engineering and Maths, WITEC, which is 33 years old. And it started in Sheffield, and it was led by a professor called Jeff Chivers in the Department of Lifelong Learning. When he realized that there were not enough women studying IT, he set up WITEC as a project. So it's a great success story about a project that started 33 years ago that became an association. And we actively work across Europe with different projects from very small girls up to women at a board level. So today we're gonna quickly talk about FemSTEM project because it's a project that is sponsoring this webinar, the results that we have undertaken so far. We're gonna have our fantastic guest speakers today, a little bit of activities, and some of the training and opportunities are coming along for FemSTEM women. And of course, feel free to network throughout using the chat. So the FemSTEM coaching project is an Erasmus Plus project, and that is a European Commission funded project. We are trying to look at different areas where we know that is a leaking pipeline, where we lose women at the recruitment, at the retention, and at the progression. It's a 30-month project. It's a small program. It's a pilot with our partners, Rana from Luxembourg. We have an organization there that looks at women in science or promoting women in science, engineering, and technology. Our partners from Italy, Spain, and Greece. So we are all together piloting and doing similar things right now. Our colleagues in Europe are doing also similar webinars as the one that is taking place today. So we talk about the framework for those R's, the RRP that we talk very much in terms of women in SET. We will be looking at developing an e-coaching program that is more like a training program, and we're going to have some circles that it's peer mentoring, and that's what's going to start all next year. So that the main aim was to build, the main aim of the program is to build confidence, develop soft skills amongst women that they've identified they might need more support in their development. And we will be looking at these areas that I was telling you about. Recruitment for those at entry level, so STEM graduates that tend not then afterwards not to go to a STEM job. Retention, talking about women returning back to work in STEM after a career break. We know that there's a massive leaking pipeline there where women do not come back after maternity leave, and of course as well ensuring women are retained in the workplace. And progression, very much about the glass ceiling. How do we help and pursue women moving into management positions, so a general career progression in this field. So what we did very quickly, we did a framework testing. We collect information amongst our European partners. What was the situation of women in STEM currently, looking at different, identifying barriers and discussing training opportunities. So we carried out focus groups. We look at companies as well. So in the UK, for example, we look at we did qualitative interviews with 20 women in STEM and approached 8 companies offering STEM jobs in the UK. And we also had focus groups. We had a national report, and we're going to put together a European comparative report that will be available very soon, collecting the information that our other European partners gathered. But basically, I know you know this, it is quite still very sad and obviously something that the European Commission is trying to address, the underrepresentation of women in STEM. 1 in 3 STEM graduates are women. 10 to 24% of women work in STEM-related positions, and less than 10% of women are in leadership positions in STEM. So we can see that all these issues are addressing from recruitment, retention, and progression. Then we asked some of our women in STEM, or the ones that have just finished STEM or wanted to come back, what were the soft skills that they felt that they needed the most. And as you can see on the left-hand side, they were talking about critical thinking, creative thinking, leadership, teamwork, self-confidence, and a very important aspect now that we're in a globalized economy, that interculturality and working across cultures. How do you manage international teams? Why this webinar was so important, and thank you very much for our fantastic speakers, because something that has come up for the last, I think, 25 years I've been working in Women in SED is the lack of female role models. There are not enough role models for young women to go like, oh, I could do that, you know. It's still very much the stereotype of engineering is not a career for women, and they need that role models. And I think role models not only for the young ladies that are finishing university, but for all of us, you know, women that are progressing, women that have come back after career break and have found different areas, women that have managed to go to board level. So we need a whole range of female role models, which we're going to be collecting throughout the project. Obviously, also, there needs to be much more, as we know, a focus at a graduate school level that will increase the number of those starting careers in STEM. Still, even women all over the world are doing better in maths and physics compared to their male colleagues. They still choose not to study engineering or science-related careers. And obviously, there is a need to address cultural change in organizations where there are a lot of still things that discriminate women in STEM. Obviously, it's not only women in STEM. We know that the Fawcett Society just published a report that says that in the UK, it's going to take around 105 years for men and women to earn the same, doing the same job. So of course, it's not only in STEM, it is definitely an issue, but sometimes harder for women when they are in underrepresented fields where they feel there's not a critical mass to make a difference in that cultural change. Very interesting statistics with regard to the European Commission in terms of women in STEM. These are statistics from Eurostat. This is the proportion of women scientists and engineers in the EU. So you can see Lithuania is at the top with 57%. When I speak to my Lithuanian colleagues, as well as my Spanish colleagues, engineering, for example, as a profession is like being a doctor. It has a lot of status. It's something that people are aiming for. And also, because while you have more women studying engineering in terms of peer pressure, then it means that more women feel it's more natural because they can see more of their friends studying engineering. So that is important when you get to the critical mass. The United Kingdom, as you can see, is just slightly above the EU average. And this, of course, we have to be aware that when we talk about science and engineering, it's as well how they group it. At the moment that you add their biology, then you have a lot of women. If you go into electrical engineering, you hardly have any women. So also we have to be aware how we're looking at these statistics. And then we have Luxembourg and Hungary at the bottom of the scale. and our associate European partners, Norway, Iceland, and Switzerland. Norway doing quite well, almost at the same level as Lithuania. This, of course, is also information from Eurostat. In 2017, that was the latest statistics that Eurostat produced. Almost 18 million scientists. There are almost 18 million scientists and engineers in the EU, and 59% were men and 41% were women. Obviously, I'll let you read these statistics because they're really interesting. So as you can see, this sum up what I previously show you about how Lithuania, Bulgaria, and Latvia are doing so well compared to other countries. So I would like now to do a small exercise to help to bring you all together. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If I can, oh, now the sun just came in and I cannot even see my screen anymore. Wait. Okay, so if you have your phones, I'm going to ask you to participate in something called Menti. So you have just to open the browser of your phone and just type www.menti.com. And I will just try to find where it is. Okay, here it is. Okay, so if you, let me just go back to share my screen. Okay, can you all see my Menti screen? Yes. So if you put the code 541520, I would be interested in finding what do you think are the challenges women faced at entry level? And this is just words that come to mind or sentences that you think are the main challenges that women face at entry level, meaning recruitment phase. When women have finished, could be when women just finished university or apprenticeships or at that level that they can then go into the work environment, or what I mean as well is at entry level studying science, engineering, and technology. So when you are adding that in Mentimeter, you just need to make sure you press submit. And you have 3 challenges. Okay, confidence, imposter syndrome. Okay. So confidence, I think, is the one that is the most mentioned, as well as lack of role models and potential maternity absence, poor job descriptions, discrimination, stereotypes. Fantastic. So I think confidence, we all agree that is one of the main challenges at entry level. Okay, so now the next one is, what are the reasons why women leave the workplace, you think? Lack of progression, maternity, right? Lack of mentoring. Lack of job satisfaction. Confidence again, progression, underpaid, very much linked to what research talks about, discrimination. And of course, leaving the workplace means that even though they go on maternity, it is the challenges they often face coming back. So it's not only going, but of course, returning. Unequal treatment. Okay, so we have seen, we agree in the first one, the one that was most mentioned was confidence here, maternity, but very interesting words I can see like challenging bosses or lack of mentors. So this comes up a lot, the lack of mentors. Okay, so the next one is, what are the challenges women face in their career progression? Okay, we can see tend to be invisible, poor recognition, glass ceiling, training opportunities, confidence came up again, mentors, and not being recognized for a lot of the work that they are doing. Encouragement from bosses, that is very much related to, of course, to mentoring. Bias, absolutely. Lack of childcare, that comes up a lot as well. That difficulty in managing work-life balance, and therefore not being able to put themselves forward to taking in a position with much more responsibility. But interesting, compared to first slide, again, the one that the word that comes up again, that is the most mentioned, is confidence. And that is something we're going to be talking about. How do you improve confidence, and what, because it's a soft skill, how do we develop it? Okay, so I want you to think about the cultural environment where you, not what you think, but in the culture that you work in. The word, let's talk about a word association for the word leader. Do you think it is a male, female, or both trait? When people talk about a leader, will people think it's a man, it's a woman, or it is both? It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think 10 years ago, when we wouldn't see so many, for example, female leaders as in the media, um, the male trait will be much more higher than both. So I think the media and a lot of uh, media figures like Michelle Obama, etc., have Merkel, have really changed the association of a word leader. That's the importance of role models, because they start really changing the concept that we have about word association. So, okay, so it seems both one. Okay, so the next one, the word association for emotional, is more related to, okay, to female. And when we think about that, think about the word leadership and emotional. And then you will start seeing how all these words and this connotation have such reinforcement about stereotype, and something that as well have to be addressed. Okay. So the next one is the word association for stubborn. And of course, we are seeing more women in this group than men. So it's interesting if you would have a group of 50-50 men and women, what they would say. But our word association for stubborn, it's men. When you look at research, stubbornness tends to be associated much more to women. So that is interesting that we have a different here of understanding, but both is the one that is stronger in this group. Okay, word association for sensitive. Okay, female. Okay, so that I will stop there and go back. Now, I just want you to leave that to give you some food for thought. If we're talking about the traits, about female traits, about sensitive or emotional, there's a need, and that's what research is putting forward, a new sense of leadership, a leadership that is much more in touch and more in tune with feelings, a leadership that is much more human leadership. And that doesn't mean that men cannot do it. It's independently of about being a woman or a man. It's about the type of leadership that is much more humane and much more a caring leadership that talks that is very much about emotional intelligence leadership. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen again and find out the PowerPoint just to show you one more riddle before we move to our first speaker. That will be Jessica. Okay, so probably for some of you who have already seen this riddle, please do not answer in the chat if you'll know the answer. I'm just gonna show it for those ones who have not seen this riddle before. And it says, a father and a son get in a car crash and are rushed to the hospital. The father passes away and the boy is taken to the operating room and the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy, he's my son. How is this possible? For some of you who have never seen this riddle, if you want to add in the chat, what do you think? How is this possible? Yes, Helen said he is. That's right, mother. Okay. That is fascinating. I have done this riddle so many times amongst different groups. When I do this with girls that are teenagers, so between the age of 13 and 16, they don't get it. People say it was an angel, was it God? When I do this with little children, you know, at the age of like, I don't know, 8, 9, they do get it. So there is something about stereotypes and peer pressure when girls turn teenagers, become teenagers, that they immediately have a very, very strong stereotype about professions. And obviously a lot of you working with women in SET and yourselves women in SET might be so obvious, but if you would do this to an audience that is different, like, you know, if I would bring all my neighbors and ask them to look at this riddle, it is not as easy, because stereotypes is something that's so ingrained in us that is part of our unconscious mind. We don't think much about it. So I will now like to introduce our next speaker. That is Jessica, and I have known Jessica for more than 15 years, and her career path has been absolutely extraordinary, a mix of entrepreneurship, academia, and now we will hear a very exciting new path in the field of mobile applications. So Jessica, over to you. I think you are now a co-presenter if you want to.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
Most people have got their cameras off. There's a couple of people who know me already on here. So just a bit of background before I share my presentation. My presentation is still branded with my old company name because it's an old presentation. But for those of you in the group who know me already, you'll notice I've got some new branding behind me because I'm just starting a new job. I'll explain more about that when I get to the end of the presentation. Let me just share my screen. And then I need to start. I've got my PowerPoint presentation in presenter mode, and I think that means you can see all of that, can't you? Okay. There we go. Okay, can everyone see the presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So this presentation, the reason that it's still got my old branding on is because I dug it up this morning. I wasn't going to do any PowerPoints, and then Marina and her team kept prompting me, so I thought, I have got this one. So this is a presentation I did actually a few years ago for Ada Lovelace Day when I was working at Sheffield's Hallam University, and I was running a project for girls in STEM in the computing department. And the reason that project came about was because I and a colleague had noticed that across the two subject groups of software engineering and games development that we were teaching on, we had 2 girls out of 180 or so students. And actually in fact, they were both international students. One was from Greece, one was from China. So there was a lot of isolation happening between for the girls in computing, because not only were they international students coming into a strange country and having to make new friends, they were also in a very, very male environment. So we set up a few little initiatives a while ago, and this was sort of my summary of my career to explain to the students. So I thought it's a nice little summary to just do for you now as well. And I will rush through it a little bit because I know I'm conscious I've only really got 15 minutes. So just a bit of background. I was, or still am until Monday, director of my own limited company, digital marketing agency, doing all the stuff you'd expect, websites, social media, search engine optimization, all of those sorts of things. I also was a representative councillor for Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber, and I did that for about 15 years, 5 years of which I was chairing the Women in Business board there. I decided to stand down from Women in Business because I felt the existence of a Women in Business group was actually part of the problem within the chamber. Why do we need a group? By having a group, we were basically highlighting the issue. So, and I felt like things needed to change. It needed to be more about diversity across everything, not just women. I was also director of the Chamber Skills Solutions, which is the Chamber's training arm. So I was doing lots of sort of businessy stuff around small businesses. And at the same time, I also, and this is another thing, I'm stepping down from everything. There's another thing. So all of these things I'm not doing anymore. I founded an outdoor swimming group a few years ago as well, because I wanted to swim in a certain place. They wouldn't give me permission, so I had to start a group, and that all got out of hand and became a massive operation that needed a committee to run. Yeah, so that's sort of a bit about me. My main hobby is the swimming. Last year I did a swim of Coniston. I don't know if anyone knows Coniston Water. It's about 5.5 miles from one end to the other, and I have no pride in doing that, in swimming that length, that distance, because the reason I did it is because a friend of mine was bugging me to do it and wanted me to do it with her, and she was 82. So I can't claim anything for that, because an 82-year-old lady swam that swim as well. So just a bit of background on my career in STEM. Obviously, going to school in the 90s, we didn't have great computers in them days. My first computer at home was an Amstrad CPC 464. I don't know if any of the nerds out there will remember that, but there's a nice picture of it. And it was all, this is obviously, because this presentation was for the students, the sort of stuff, the sort of technology that was in my early life. And I was interested in it, and there was a little bit of opportunity to sort of get interested in computers. But there weren't very many computers in schools anymore and things like that. And one of the things that happened is, in the time I was taking my GCSEs, was the first year that GCSE IT was available as a topic. So IT didn't exist as a GCSE before that. And because it was new, everybody wanted to do it. If you remember at school, you choose your options. So if you're GCSE, and you're choosing which subjects you want to do. And because a lot of people chose to do IT because it was popular, and they didn't have any, very many teachers at the school that were trained up to do it. I think one was an art teacher that they'd roped in. They were oversubscribed. So what my school, in its wisdom, did is they took all of the girls who had chosen this subject to one side, and they said to us, we think this is more of a boys' subject, and you'd be better off really doing the office studies course instead, because you learn to type. And out of probably, I don't know how many girls chose GCSE IT, but there were 4 of us that actually went through to do it. And there were, I think, 3 classes full of kids doing it. So if I'd have taken that early advice and done office skills and typing, I would have never had the career that I've got now. I then went on to A-level IT. There were 2 of the girls made it through to A-level IT. We both got A stars in it, so we proved them wrong. But talking to careers advisors and my teachers, I was advised by all around really that English was the thing I should do. I was strong at English. I've got A stars in it. That was the subject. And it was sort of really drummed into me that this sort of thing, you be an English teacher. So I went to study English at the University of York in Scarborough, and I was really unhappy. And one of the things that happened at Scarborough was I went into the IT class. We had 1 IT class a week. Spoke to the teacher for a few minutes, and they said, you know enough, you don't need to come to the classes, we've short of computers anyway. Here's all the assignments, come back at the end of the term. We know that you can do this because you've got A-level IT. And I wasn't allowed in the computer room on my English degree because I was overqualified and I didn't need to learn it. And that was really miserable for me. So I came back to Sheffield. Scarborough's also, stick that picture in, Scarborough's miserable in the winter. It's lovely at that time of year. In the summer, when it's all nice and sunny, end of October, everything's shut and it's horrible. So I was miserable. So I came back to Sheffield. I took a temping job at the Forum, which, for those of you who aren't from Sheffield, it's a bar, cafe, little shopping centre. That got me into marketing, and I ended up marketing the Gatecrasher nightclub. And at the same time, because I was back in Sheffield, I really didn't enjoy the English degree. I decided to go and do a computing degree part-time at Sheffield Hallam in the evenings. So I was working at the Forum in marketing, doing my computing degree 4 till 9 in the evenings. Eventually then I moved into an IT role. I worked at Action for Employment. I don't know if any of you remember them. They were quite a big employer in Sheffield at the time, running welfare to work programmes. I went back to Sheffield Hallam and ended up doing a bit of teaching part-time, and also launching a business with my best friend from university. And we had an IT support business, which went really well. But one of the barriers at that time, and we're talking sort of 2005 to 2008, 9-ish, was the acceptance of women fixing computers. So when I went into a client's offices and they saw it was a woman who was going to be setting up their small business server and configuring their network, and especially when they saw me with tools like, I was fitting network sockets and things like that, there was a definite lack of confidence because we were female, and we had some comments around that in one of the business competitions that we entered. So then the banking crash happened. It's going to very quick potted history, this. The banking crash happened. We closed down that business, and I went into self-employment. I was still teaching at Hallam, and I was self-employed as well, doing the odd websites and bits of IT support and things like that. But I think one of the things that was happening at that time for me was I got 1 foot in lecturing at Hallam, and I was 1 foot in my business. And while I was enjoying the teaching, it wasn't what I really, really passionately wanted to do. What I wanted to do was help the small businesses that I was doing, I was working with in my company. So despite the large difference in salary, I quit the university and went full time back into my business. So we went from mostly doing IT and local servers to websites, servers in the cloud, document management in the cloud, social media, search engine optimization. And I did a Google Squared online certificate. I don't know if anyone's come across that before, to brush up on my marketing skills, because I've been in the techie side for a bit. And then I launched a digital marketing agency. And that was sort of a big jump, really, moving away. And I think I was, when we were doing the Menti thing with Marina, I was the one that kept putting imposter syndrome in there, because I think that was a massive thing for me. At A4E, I managed an IT support services team, so technicians, and there were 20, and they were all male. And when I got promoted into that role, we sat in a meeting with all of the team, and 2 of those males in my team actually stood up in front of me and everyone else in the department and resisted that change. Why is she being promoted to be our boss? We've been here longer, we know more, we've got more experience, blah, blah. And my boss had to defend me and sort of explain why I'd been put there. And as a woman, it makes you feel like you somehow, it's not your place to be there. So from that, and then teaching the other businesses, going it alone and building this second business on my own without my best friend at my side. Although I've got my partner with me who is extremely supportive, and we sort of took it to the next level, from going from sole trader back to limited company. So that's sort of a potted history of my career so far. This was one that I stuck in there for the students. One of the things was, sort of, as you go along, keep in touch with everyone you meet, because it's really surprising who you get, who you come across again later in your career in different roles. First impressions count both ways, and you will experience imposter syndrome. I do not know one woman in a male-dominated industry across the STEM disciplines that has not at some point experienced imposter syndrome. So please, if there is anybody in the group who hasn't, let me know. Because I think it's one of the biggest issues for women. We feel like, for some reason, probably because we're female, that actually we've got here into this position, and we shouldn't really. It's not our place to be here, and at some point we'll get found out, and a man will come in and take that position instead. So believe in yourself and follow your heart, but take your brain with you. That was one of my sort of little tips I used to give to students all the time. It's great to sort of dream and have these aspirations, but actually have a bit of a plan to it as well. Because what I did is I thought I was following my heart doing English, but actually, really, it was computing that was the passion. So I've shown all of the Xeon Digital branding all the way through. The latest chapter is we have decided to close down Xeon Digital and join one of our most fantastic customers who are currently building a mobile app, or building 3 mobile apps now. And they offered the Xeon Digital team a fantastic opportunity to go and join them. And at the moment, with coronavirus and lockdown, and although we've been doing quite well actually through the summer, we've seen a lot of negative impact on our industry and on our competitors. And so we really believe in the passion behind what Ethical Social Group are doing with the app that they're building. And I know I've run over, Marina, so I'm sorry, but I just want to take a couple of minutes just to explain to you what My Bubble is. Now, we've got a link in there. Feel free to go on and have a look and register. The ethos behind this company is about improving people's lives in whatever way we can. I think Galina is still on the call with me. Galina is our Chief People Officer. She's here. Hello. We are basically on a mission to build mobile apps to improve people's lives. The My Bubble app is the first of those, and that's a social media app. The main difference with it is that you are in charge and you own your data rather than you being the product. So with things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and whatever other social platforms you might use, even LinkedIn, you are the product. The fact that you use that app means that they can sell information about your usage and your engagement and any information that you share. Has anyone seen, I can't really do a show of hands because not many of you have got your cameras on, but just out of interest in the chat.
But they can put it in the chat, yeah.
You can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, the Social Dilemma film on Netflix, it really sort of, it is what we're all about. These sorts of apps are just, they want you to give them your time. You give them your time for free and your information for free, and that's how they make their profits. The My Bubble app will cost you, not the advertiser, because there are no advertisers. So you pay, the highest price you would pay is £2 a month, but there are options to get it for £1 a month, by being an early tester, by being under 21, by working for the NHS, by recruiting your friends. There's lots of ways that you can get the app for free for a period and for a discount, but the maximum you would pay is £2 per month. And that means that we can then deliver this app without advertisers, and you don't get advertised to. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be opportunities for businesses. We're planning on adding a content platform to it. So you will, you'll be able to access sort of content from content providers who can create stuff like, we've got some health wellbeing companies who are going to be putting things like yoga and mindfulness training into there. There'll be articles, recipes, how-to guides, all sorts of things like that. But the whole premise behind it is those companies who are providing information and resources on the platform will only be able to advertise the stuff that is available on the platform in the ecosystem. There will be some premium content that you can purchase for micropayments, but the main idea is that it is all contained within the platform. And another thing that we're trying to do is make it so that it is completely safe, not just from advertisers, but from predators and stalkers and spammers and other nefarious characters that you might come across on social media. And the way we do that is we use a digital identity system called Yoti, which is another app that I would recommend you have a look at. I think Helen Shaw was on the call earlier. I don't know if she's still on.
Yeah,
Hi,
she's
Helen.
still here. Yes, she's still here.
So Helen's worked quite closely with Yoti, and we've just recently connected because of this association. So basically what this means is Yoti is a really, really secure digital ID verification system. And it can check with things like your driving license or your passport or your citizen card to prove you are who you say you are. And what will happen is everyone who joins the My Bubble app will have to prove their ID in some way or another, either by having a Yoti account or using Yoti's document sign system to prove they are who they say they are. So nobody can do stuff within My Bubble under a false ID. Now, you can have a different name and you can have a different profile photo, but no matter what happens, we can always trace it back to that person. So we've got a robust reporting system and moderation system, and when you do something that's against the terms and conditions, there will be consequences, and we know who you are. So that's my bubble. There are a couple of other apps. Join our mailing list on the My Bubble app website, and you'll be able to be kept up to date with everything that Ethical Social Group are doing. And I know I've run over quite a bit now, so I'm going to shut up and let Marina have control back. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jess. I think you touch upon a lot of the topics that we know there are out there in the literature, and what I have heard a lot of about women in SET, the role of the school, where they were taking, the girls saying this is not a girl's thing, it's a boy's thing, that is still happening. So important how to make this a cultural thing. The issue about imposter syndrome. And how can we start then looking at confidence and building that confidence from an early age in young girls, isn't it? And obviously the important thing about mentoring and keeping in touch. So we'll have an opportunity towards the end to ask more questions to Jess, but please feel free to add Jess some questions in the chat. Thank you, Jess. That was very, very inspiring, looking at all the journey. And I think it's interesting because people think that careers are from A to B, and it's more like a maze, right? You go right, left, you go back, you go up, and that is really exciting.
I've definitely bounced around between marketing and IT. That's my thing. I thought I wanted to be a journalist. I thought I wanted to be I was marketing nightclubs, and then I was no, I like computers. I want to program, and it's just that bouncing around until you find where you are. And actually, the role that I'm taking on now as Chief Product Officer with Ethical Social Group means that I will be able to use all of those skills, and I'll have a foot in development, but I'll also be involved in marketing and building the product. So
very exciting, yeah. And hopefully we'll have you in a couple of years, and then you will tell us a little bit more about that new journey. Thank you, Jess. I would like to introduce our next guest speaker, Dr. Helen Meese. When Helen accepted our invitation to come as our guest speaker, I was absolutely delighted, as it is easier to find a needle in a haystack than a female mechanical engineer who is also an entrepreneur. So thank you very much, Helen. I will hand over to you now. I think you're a co-host, so if you want to share your presentation. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me as well. I appreciate, let's just put that in slide mode. I'm going to turn my video off if I can. Yes, there it is. Purely because then you can see the slides a lot clearer, and you can listen and watch rather than see my ugly face on the screen. So hi everyone. I'm going to go straight into this, and obviously there'll be opportunities for questions and things later, so I look forward to hearing what those might be. It's safe to say that I suppose, I know there's a few gentlemen on the line as well, but most of you listening today are going to be in one or more of these areas. You're either women who are already in some kind of STEM profession, you might be looking to go into a STEM profession and have come to hear maybe some advice or some thoughts on how you might do that. Or you might be, as already been pointed out, women who have left STEM for one or more reasons and may be considering coming back. But whatever part of your career that you are in, I just thought I'd give you a few STEM facts, probably to add to Marina's points as well. We can now really shout from the rooftops, I think, in the UK, that there are over 1 million women in the UK now in STEM occupations, which is fantastic. And there are nearly 50,000 women in my profession of engineering, which is even more wonderful. And this is really thanks to the likes of Marina, the colossal efforts of the numerous STEM organisations who are continuing to promote STEM careers, and the hundreds of thousands of volunteers as well, who take the time every day, every year, to champion STEM in schools and across the UK and internationally as well. But we cannot afford to be complacent, as has already been said. The proportion of tech roles held by women has remained virtually unchanged for the last 10 years. And while we are on target to reach critical mass, which is about 30%, in the next 10 years, it's still going to take us another 10 years to get there. So why are these facts really important? Well, I'm 47 now, and I would really like to see us reach critical mass by the time, if not before, I am 57. And I would certainly like to think that we no longer need to be actively promoting STEM to women by the time I retire. That's a nice thought. So I thought I would share with you a bit of my journey certainly from STEM failure to starting my own company, and what I believe to be the change that we should all strive for and embody to go from that critical mass to sustained chain reaction. It's a little nuclear physics joke there for you. So let's start at the beginning, really. I grew up surrounded by science and technology. My dad was an engineer for the coal board in the UK, and most of my role models were middle-aged working class men in heavy industry, and that's a result of growing up in Yorkshire in the 70s and 80s. But my dad was really my inspiration, I suppose. He really inspired me. He was incredibly passionate about anything that moved and made a noise, and his knack of always having some sort of story about that piece of machinery or equipment. There was always some story behind it. And of course, I think I may have been born slightly with a bit of an innate interest in science and technology, it has to be said, but that it was always supplemented by heavy doses of Doctor Who, Star Wars, Star Trek, and things like Buck Rogers. Oh, sorry. There's I think some sound on the line there. And so it was always these sort of science fiction and science fact things that kind of really got me excited. And it was also a very significant visit to a power station when I was only 7 years old, which totally blew my mind. I had no clue what it was about, but I wanted to do it, whatever it was. And so that, plus the combination of family trips to look at trains and trams and buildings and all kinds of things, and my own personal dream of living in space at some point, really kind of brought me to the world of engineering. But it wasn't an easy path. You see, I'm not that bright. At least that's what my maths teacher told me. And to some extent, I suppose he was right. I did find studying very hard, but I got a few lucky breaks. And having only got one A-level, I managed to get into a foundation year course at Loughborough University. And that was really, for me, at the point where it all slotted into place. For the first time, all that theory and all that sort of practical application, I had an opportunity to not just calculate things, but make things as well. And that really made a difference to me. So from two U's, from a U, two N's and an E, I got a 2-1 in electromechanical power engineering, and I spent an industrial placement year on an oil refinery. Now, for those of you who can see this picture, just to get it into context, that is a fire engine just there. It is not a toy. This is a very large hole in the ground. This blew up while I was working there. I hasten to add, it was not my fault. But I did spend quite a bit of time as a fitter's apprentice learning the hard way on how to survive the engineering world. And then, bizarrely, I got offered a PhD for someone who'd failed their A-levels and was vaguely average at university. Somebody thought that I could do a PhD. So I ended up doing a PhD in turbocharging, which is a bit of a weird thing. But I learned quite a lot about myself at this point and my capabilities and how I could manage my time, and particularly the difficulties of doing that sort of studying, because I had to take on a job in another department in the engineering school to pay my bills. So it took me 10 years to complete my PhD, and I had to do it part-time. But I did get to do some very cool research at the same time, not least of which was the Electric Armour Project and research program with the STL, where I got to blow things up for 5 years, and they paid me to do it. It was marvelous, and I also got to drive tanks, which was very cool, but mostly blowing things up, and I had a very great time doing that. So when I finally had to bite the bullet and get a proper job, as my dad said, it was, of course, in the defence industry. And within a year of starting at Babcock International, I was lead engineer on the decoy dispenser project for Eurofighter, again, blowing things up. I led a team of 8 engineers and technicians, making some really significant decisions on the design and development of a critical piece of technology on this aeroplane. And I also had to spend quite a lot of time trying to stop the customer from blowing things up. You'll have seen that there's a bit of a theme to my career here. So from there, I went to work on submarines, and I went to work on ships. And in fact, I was involved with some early stage design work, which is now on the Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carrier as well. But latterly, I then moved into project management, which I suppose is the dark side of the force. And that led me to go and work with GE. And I was working, I led a team of engineers in South Korea installing electric propulsion systems in a couple of frigates out there, which was an amazing opportunity. And then came a slightly weird sort of sideways move for me. It kind of took me to the heart of everything that I really loved about engineering, and that was the IMechE. It was a chance job application which saw me head down to London to lead the engineering and society policy theme. And I couldn't believe I was going to go and work on such hallowed ground. For me, this was like, you know, the church of engineering for me. I became head of healthcare with the institution, and that was their newest policy theme, and one which I began from scratch in 2015, knowing very little about engineering in healthcare. And whilst I wasn't doing any sort of hands-on engineering anymore, I did have the privilege of working with some of the world's most astonishing engineers in prosthetics, regenerative medicine, robotics, and even incontinence. And I got to walk through the corridors of this building, which was over 170 years old, where the likes of Whittle and Stevenson and Parsons and Ricardo had all walked before. So it does make you feel very small at that point. So these are some of the reports that I actually produced, pieces of work that I produced for the institution. Now, when Emma asked me to share some of my STEM highlights, it was a really tough one because I've had so many, and I decided I was going to condense them into a single slide. So here we are. I have had the chance to do my bit to influence government. This is me in Parliament here. And that's through the policy making work that I've done. I've raised the profile of engineers through the media and public speaking. This is me on Radio 4 over here. And I continue to take part in outreach to get young children and their parents excited about science and engineering, just like I was when I was a kid. So that brings me, I suppose, to today. And through all of those trials and tribulations, the struggles to achieve academically, and the joy of working on some amazing projects, I reached my critical mass really in 2017. I left the IMechE and I found, with my newfound passion for biomedical engineering, I decided to put my money where my mouth was. And having spent 3 years talking about what government should do, I set up a consultancy to make it happen, to help those developing new medical technology get their products to market as quickly and as efficiently as possible. it brought together all of my engineering, my business, my media skills into kind of this one big melting pot, and has enabled me to continue to share my experiences and knowledge with those just starting to explore their STEM futures. And this picture here is my first conference as CEO. I was very nervous. Only a couple of pop-up stands and a few flyers, but lots of enthusiasm. I got a lot of interest and encouragement that day, and it did make me realise that being in STEM is a fantastic and unpredictable journey. So if you're interested and you'd like to know more about my business, I'm more than happy to share my story with, perhaps on another occasion. But now I find myself in other roles of responsibility. I am vice chair of the IMechE's Biomedical Engineering Committee, where I continue to write policy on medtech and biomedical engineering. I have a seat on one of the most influential, at one of the most influential tables in healthcare engineering within the Royal Academy of Engineers, with some of the most intimidatingly clever people. We talk about imposter syndrome. That's where it happens for me. And I can now share my passion through podcasting. You'll have seen on my video that I've got a very big microphone and lots of stuff here. And that's provided me with many options and gateways in my working career. So I suppose to answer the statement I made at the beginning, how do we get from critical mass to sustained chain reaction? Well, I think that we have to change our perception of ourselves. STEM should be seen as a verb. Engineering, I often refer to as a verb. It's an action. It's rather than being a noun, just some kind of ephemeral idea of what people do. And I guess this slide shows some of the great work that my colleague Peter Feingold was working on while I was at the IMechE. And while some of the findings from his reports weren't a surprise, it did make it very clear to us what we were seeing happening, particularly in the engineering field. We've been performing to less than 1/3 of the audience is what has been happening. 71% of children between the ages of 6 and 19 are not as devoted to STEM as we are. And the reports showed quite clearly that the potential was there, that if we just changed the way we present ourselves, particularly to girls, we would have a greater impact. If we want to create parity in sciences and engineering, then we must present STEM to women in a contextualized and societally beneficial way. And this is very particular to the healthcare engineering profession, in fact. We should share the behaviors of people in STEM with young people, and we should talk about what defines us as people in engineering or in science. We should reveal those incredibly diverse range of disciplines within our STEM profession and show that people come to STEM from lots of different routes. So rather than just showing the need for technical or scientific competence, we need to show that STEM is creative and innovative. We need to draw on the entrepreneurial and business aspects of our professions, and we need to signpost the career pathways within industry and dispel these myths of overalls and spanners. STEM careers, to me, are a diverse and inclusive way of looking at the world. It's not only through inspiration and encouragement, but by removing these obstacles and sharing our knowledge, we can be bold enough to empower other women by widening the opportunities of those around us and not being afraid to break new ground. So I suppose if I was going to give a message today, it would be this very famous one, which is, be the change you want to see. Challenge what you see around you. by finding something that you can dedicate yourself to and make a change. For me, it's been the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. That has really been what I've been dedicated to help drive change. Get to know yourself personally and always be prepared to self-improve, either through study or learning from others, and share your narrative with the world. Tell people what your story is. Don't be afraid to speak up and own the problem. If you step up in that way, you will inspire others to step up too. And always don't forget to get your hands dirty. Don't just tell others what needs to be done. You become a true role model if you lead by example. And well, I kind of as you know already, I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek. So in the words of two of our greatest philosophers in the history of the world, be excellent to each other, because there will always be that little girl out there just like me, filled with this glow of inspiration, who one day will need a leader to empower them just like you to achieve greater things. So thank you very much. I know I've run over just slightly, but I hope you've enjoyed that, and I look forward to speaking with you later.
That was so amazing, Helen. Thank you very, very much. I was trying to find the clap hand, but yeah, I found it. So now I can clap. Looking for the clap button. That was fantastic. And there's so many key messages. I was just trying to write as many, but I thought then I will just give out again your presentation with so many fantastic messages. But something that came to mind, because I was doing another webinar about female leadership in entrepreneurship, the importance of that, the importance of the father's role, about being so inspirational and allowing you to be whatever you want to be and supporting you in that, you know. So I think that just reminded me about that we have to probably do a webinar with dads and share the stories about how our dads have allowed us to have given us those big wings to fly. And your away days that have to do more with, because he was passionate about that, I'm sure that has an impact when you were a little girl, and then that start building in your self-belief. It's fantastic to see entrepreneurship, because when you look at the statistics about women in entrepreneurship, it's going up, but we need more role models. That's why it's fantastic to have you and Jessica here with us. But I love as well the verb that you were suggesting about changing entrepreneurship and engineering into a verb and not into a noun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. It is the doing, and that takes us very nicely to what you were saying. If you want to be the change you want to be, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. And what a better way than doing it, right? Through engineering. I love those posters you show us of all the different girls doing different things. I think we need to have much more a visible campaign in schools, right? Of those ones.
I'm more than happy to share a link to those reports. They range over a number of years, but they're certainly, I think some of your listeners today might be very interested to read some of that.
That was that, yeah. And I think because of course there are reports, but I think as well the cover will make really great posters. I think when the UK Resource Centre was around, you remember, with a couple of years ago, they had a lot of big posters to have campaigns about women can do it, and that was in a lot of schools that they were putting in the classroom, which I think it's a really interesting thing. And couple of days ago was the day of being kind to each other, and I think your quote about be excellent to each other, it's so important in terms of having that being aware about, instead of saying I went to the doctor and are you going to go to the doctor and what is he going to say, to start become very aware about when we use the he and the she, and not stereotyping. So our coffee break is exactly in 1 minute, so perfect timing. Hopefully we'll have more time towards the end to ask questions and have a little bit of a debate together with our speakers. So we're going to have a coffee break of 10 minutes. So we are back at 11:25. Although it's 11:14, but around 11:25, that will be very much appreciated. For you, Rana, for our other European colleagues, that will be almost lunchtime. So please do not leave us. Come back. Even you might want to bring a little bit of lunch with you for the next part of the of the session. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you. It's about how do you develop soft skills? How do you develop confidence? Now, I wanted to show you this model comes from the European Commission. And they work, I think, throughout, maybe 2 years. They brought in professors, they brought entrepreneurs themselves to look at what they thought were the competences needed for entrepreneurship. Now, I would say that I think this applies to everything, and I will call it more like an entrepreneurial competences. And entrepreneurial means you don't have to necessarily set up a business. It's all the things that we need even when we are working, right? Have a look. It's just into 3 main areas that they divided. One is ideas and opportunities. You can see all the competences that are needed. Resources like self-awareness and self-efficacy. What I mean is internal resources, obviously, as well. And very much making it happen, taking the initiative, planning and management, coping with ambiguity and uncertainty. So important, especially now because of what we are experiencing, working with others and learning through experience. When I have been doing research about what employers are looking for, these are definitely, all of these are main competencies that employers are also looking for. So something I wanted now to debate, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can turn on our cameras, is how do we then develop these competencies, either in ourselves, or how can we help other people develop these competencies? So I'm going to stop sharing on my screen. So maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion about, I know Jessica and Helen, you were talking about a lot of things that have helped in your career, but how did you develop these competencies?
I think for me, the confidence one is a big one. And probably, how did I develop it? Having a lot of temping jobs while I was doing my A-levels and while I was at uni as well. I did lots of different jobs. So I suppose at a young age, getting thrown into lots of different companies. And then lecturing at the university and having to deliver training. Once you've stood in front of 800 first years in the Pennine Lecture Theatre at Sheffield Hallam, 20 people in a business event doesn't faze you at all. So I think the thing is just putting yourself out there and doing it, and confidence is the main thing. And I mentioned at another event a long time ago, and Marina will probably remember this, one of the things that, and this was about entrepreneurship and going for it. One of the things for me at the time, I was working in a job where I got a fairly good salary, good benefits, but I'd got this idea and we wanted to start this business. And somebody on this call said to me, the safety net will not appear until you jump. Yeah, if Marina hadn't said that to me, then JD Approach probably never have existed. It was that sort of the fear of taking the leap and just finding that confidence to go for it and do it, especially when there are lots of people out there telling you that you can't, or that it's more difficult because you're a woman, or you're not going to be accepted. We had a pitch at a business competition, myself and my business partner, and it was a bit like Dragon's Den, where there were these sort of business people we had to pitch to. And one of the people in that room said to us, "Why do you think that any company is going to trust you? I wouldn't trust a company full of women to fix my computer." And one of the other people on the panel was a woman who was actually a lady that had just won the Business Person of the Year, not Businesswoman of the Year, Business Person of the Year award at Sheffield Chamber. And she said to me, "I'll be your first customer. Come and be my IT support provider," because I'm not having that sort of attitude from sort of stereotypical male-dominated industries. And she became our first customer and is still a customer now.
Fantastic. So
Yeah,
the peer mentoring. What do you think, Helen?
Yeah, I've a similar story to Jessica's, and I would suspect that many of the ladies that are on this call today could probably nod and say a similar sort of thing. The photograph that I showed of my industrial placement on the oil refinery, as you can imagine, I think, including myself, I think there were 3 women who were in STEM related roles. One of them was a chemical engineer who was on site, but I had a fitter come up to me and say, "What are you doing here? What I would never let my daughter on this refinery." And you know, in that sort of moment where you're trying to think of something to say, and it could be rude that comes out of your mouth, or you could get your brain in gear very quickly and say something sort of astute and really profound. And I guess my profound brain kicked in, and I said, "Well, actually, my dad's really proud of me. Are you proud of your daughter?" And I know that sounds a really awful thing, and I think back to it now and I think, God, that's an awful thing to say. But just, you know, I was just, I think I was about 21. It just came out, and it was that sort of moment. And he went and scuttled away. And I think he kind of realised that actually, you know what, there was, as I said I was very well supported by my father, who encouraged me because he really wanted a boy to play cricket for Yorkshire. That's really what he wanted. But he never questioned my gender. He never questioned what I wanted to do, and he always supported me. And so to have a father say that about his own daughter kind of was a bit weird for me. And so I hope he went away and questioned his own thought process in terms of what he wanted for his child. So yeah, I'm sure there are many of us that have similar stories to that. But in terms of confidence, I don't think I've ever lacked for it. Let's say, you know, but I think it's come from the encouragement of my parents mostly, and even through my failures. You know, my A-level results were a disaster. Nobody in their right mind was going to take me for an engineer at that point, or anything really. But it was that, okay, well, that's what's happened, let's find another route. You know, apprenticeships weren't really a thing at that point, so, you know, let's find a foundation year, or could you do another year at school, or, you know, so there was never any question. There was always confidence given to me, and I think that innately gives you confidence. I think that's the most important thing.
And what happens, because I think we have all been very lucky about having parents that have supported us, but what happens when you don't have that confidence? You have a mentor or guardian that gives you that confidence. How can you develop it? What can you do?
Well, I think certainly from my experiences with sort of talking to young children about my career in engineering and taking that step into science, I think being a role model, being someone who can act as that sort of icon, or, you know, of what it is like to be in this profession, I think is really important. And we all here have a role to play in that, whether it's going into schools, doing outreach and building and making things, or even being a school governor can make a significant difference on a committee of, you know, of parents. Bring your STEM experiences to the governance of the school, and that can really, really empower not only the children but the teachers as well, to feel that somebody is there who can give thought and guidance to the curriculum and so on. So that there's loads of ways that you can provide that confidence to certainly to young people. I think to women who are already have gone through the ringer, it's a bit different. And I think there are now lots of organizations who are there to help and empower women, but it's the doing. For me, it's not just about talking about it, but actually showing. And so, you know, providing industrial placements, for example, providing opportunities to work share, those are the sorts of things that companies, that employers need to be addressing to ensure women can have the confidence to continue their STEM careers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Helen. I think there's so much, we could talk about this the whole day, isn't it? Because that is such an important issue about finding ways and becoming much more resourceful to get that support. But I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker. Hi, Christina. I have made you a co-host so that you can present just your PowerPoint. I met Christina, I think maybe 20 years ago, and I have, I know, maybe 10 years ago. Because, like, I don't know.
It probably was.
But I do remember when it was when I was setting up Innova, and Innova is going to be 20 years next year. So probably must have been maybe 17 years ago. And I have followed your career with great interest, Christina, because you never stop surprising me. And I'm sure that that's something you make sure that everybody will be surprised with all the stories you have to tell us. So over to you, Christina. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, just give me a few seconds because I'm used to Teams rather than Zoom.
I know. So there's a button at the bottom. It's at the bottom.
Oh yeah,
it says share screen. Yeah.
Should I share? I'll share the PowerPoint and see if that works. Do you have to press?
Yeah, then you have to press again share. So you choose the screen you want to share.
Got it. It's because I've got people messaging me at the same time.
And then you just have to put it in presenter mode. Yeah, slideshow. Great.
Hey.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Well, I hope you can all hear me. I haven't got a fancy setup as Helen has. I feel very kind of like this. It's all on the normal thing on my laptop. But we are buying a studio, so thank you very much for inviting me here. It's great to see so many people on the call, and you know, this is really kind of talking about my tech and innovation journey. So a little bit about my background, and then sort of going in this last kind of 18 months in this new kind of company that I'm working with, a scale-up tech company, which I think's interesting. Before we went in lockdown, some of the activities that we were doing, and hopefully some learning points along the way. So Christina King, Chief Commercial Officer of Tribosonics, and yeah, it's great to kind of see you. So I thought I'd start with this one. Let me move the speaking thing. So yeah, as Marina said, we've known each other 20, maybe more years. And, you know, Marina's been, I think it's just really important to kind of say this, Marina's been a mentor to me. I remember when I was considering doing my MBA and thinking about, you know, how could I do it? Could I do it part-time with my job, or should I do it full-time? She really encouraged me to go for it full-time. She also helped me kind of write a kind of position letter for the University of Leeds, and actually helped me secure some funding for my course. So, you know, amazing. And I always remember that, and I really appreciate that. We obviously worked together before then and set up one of the first women in business and women entrepreneurs networks in Yorkshire, and actually the country, because at that time there weren't many women networks at all for entrepreneurs, women in public life, or women in business. You know, so we were kind of trailblazing at the time. Apparently now there's about 4,000 networks, I heard the other day, and I thought, well, we were on the we were one of the first, so really, really happy about that. And of course, you know, a friend as well. We both had our children roughly the same time as well, so we went kind of through that interesting part of our lives as well. And I just thought, I've got the picture of the cactus that was on your, was it 15 year? You did tell me 15-year anniversary, so 5 years ago. And I thought it's grown really well, and it does kind of signify how we've kind of grown together. So I think that's really cool. If you guys are on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with anybody. Always happy to kind of, you know, help or expand networks. So, okay. So where did it all begin? So I did a mechanical engineering degree at Brunel University. And then following that, I was lucky enough to get a graduate scheme at Vickers Defence Systems up in Leeds. So it was a brand new kind of area for me. I don't think I'd been north of Watford, so there was all that side of things as well, but also kind of a really interesting kind of product to work with. So big corporate at the time. They had loads of divisions in the business. So they owned Cosworth, they had a big marine, a big aerospace division, but I specifically worked in the defence side. And that particular product there, which you can see in the background, is a Challenger 2 main battle tank. So, you know, it's a big eye-opener for me. Obviously lots of men to work with because it was an engineering based company, but interestingly on my graduate kind of cohort it was more women than men at the time, which was really unusual. So I think there was 3 women engineers, a marketing person and a HR person, and then two men. So really great group to kind of get together. And this actual kind of picture is when we used to go down and test the tanks, like batch tests. So you batch test 4 tanks that come off the line out of 12, and you take them through about a month and a half of different testing. So road testing, live firing on the move. You spend about 2 weeks just preparing the tank, because they don't come off the tank, they don't come off the line all fully finished. So that was a kind of eye-opener for me. I thought once things come off the production line, it's all perfect, but it really wasn't. But there was, I did find that quite a challenging environment, but also exciting environment to be in. I did feel I had to work twice as hard to be seen at the same level as some of my colleagues, especially male engineers. They were kind of expected to kind of get all the overalls on and go and do work on the tanks. I wanted to be involved in that, but I had to really push that. And I remember my manager saying at the time, I really didn't think you'd want to do that kind of work. So, there was a lot of bias and assumptions, which there still are now, but, this was 20 years ago, so there was a lot then. And you really had to kind of speak out. But I'm quite a loud person. I do like talking to people. So I was quite, had to push myself out there to do that. And it is quite difficult when you're young and inexperienced and you don't know if you can do the job, but, I was willing to try and sort of go out there. And this was a great success, and it was a really great project, and I really enjoyed that. And just kind of on a personal note, the guy who's to my left is the guy that I ended up marrying. So, and we're still together sort of 20 years later. So it was good from that perspective as well. So kind of moving on, I've skipped a lot of things, but I suppose in the middle between Vickers Defence and when this happened, I kind of I moved on to a technology consultancy company, which is where I met Marina, and we ran the kind of projects, the Women Entrepreneurs projects. And I really kind of got a taste of working in a consultancy environment, and really kind of looking at different businesses, and it opened up a whole new world to me. When you're in a big corporate, you just know that business and you know that world, and you don't really know what else is out there. And I think I needed to kind of move on and just see what opportunities were out there, and to really kind of learn about where I wanted to go next. And that's when I kind of left my full-time job and went back to university for a year to do my MBA. So I had 7 years work experience, if you like, which is what you need to kind of go and do your MBA at Leeds University anyway. And then kind of moved into another consultancy after that, and then worked for the Sheffield Hallam University for 10 years. And one of the kind of amazing projects that we got to do, working as part of the sports engineering group, the research centre, which is where I worked as a business development manager. So not a central kind of function. I worked with the engineers to actually look at helping them either get grant funded projects in, commercialise some of the research they were doing, and kind of thirdly, this other stuff, which was really interesting, such as we get approached by a TV company that were working on the Speed with Guy Martin programme, and they wanted us to set a world record for a motorless vehicle, which is, and we had to do it, I think, in about 4 or 5 months. So with all these things, it wasn't just the people that are standing there in that picture. That was the kind of core team that they wanted to show on the TV. There was all the other engineers that kind of helped with the project as well. And I think the really big kind of, and if you hadn't seen it, you know, it was one of the only ones of that series where we did actually set or break, if you like, the world record, official Guinness World Record. And I think we got up to 84 miles an hour. And we had to go to France on a big kind of mountain, biggest mountain we could find, and to actually kind of send Guy Martin down in a vehicle that we'd created, and hope for the best. Actually, he crashed on the 13th run, but you know, he was okay, and it did protect him. I suppose the biggest takeaways for this: TV brings great PR. We did have a tight time scale and a limited budget, but we did use, you know, following that kind of experience, we did use our experience to talk to young people at STEM events and schools, and through our blogs that we wrote afterwards. It's a really good engagement tool to talk to other people, and it's, you know, it's a fantastic kind of career highlight as well that we're lucky to be involved in. Some of the other stuff that we did at Sheffield Hallam University, so a Sport Technology Innovation Fund. So this was a call by the London Mayor's Office and London Sport to increase physical activity for people in the community and health. And we developed a pacing light system for novice runners to use. And it was a kind of big award event that we went down to the Science Museum. But the main kind of takeaway here for people is that, you know, there's many innovation calls, and I see a lot now in the different sectors that I work in, where the problem and need is defined. And usually there's a budget to pay for a pilot project or a proof of concept. And it really kind of enables you to kind of get that project started, get it, you know, prove your idea, get it to the next phase. And it actually gets you involved in linking to investors who want to invest in new technology areas and ideas. So that was kind of cool to do as well. I suppose one of the biggest projects that I'm proud of at Sheffield Hallam is the Shuttle Shocks project. So because this was taken from a creative kind of concept idea to point of market entry, and that took about 8 years, and it's still kind of, you know, watch this space. We're hoping with the big brand that they are going to take it through. So this could be a presentation in its own right, but I think what I really wanted to say here is this was working with a governing body, so Badminton England, who understood the market needs and size and had a great idea for taking the badminton indoor game outside, you know, to actually increase participation and also not be limited to the number of kind of courts that there are. So it's a great idea. We had some really good tech that one of the engineers kind of got a patent on it, and a good commercial team to drive it forward. And really that was just myself, the engineer, John Hart, and the guy from Badminton England, George. And we kind of drove this forward, got the funding in that we needed to take the project through to proof of concept, you know, built a tool, rapid prototyping, patents, branding, you know, we did the lot, and it was a really good kind of innovation journey. And I know John uses that a lot in his teaching for the young master students that are coming through for sports engineering. Okay, I have no clock in front of me. Let me see. I hope I'm doing all right for time. Is that all right, Marina?
Yes, if you want to finish the round in 5 minutes, that would be great.
Blimey, okay. I will kind of race through. I think I've only got a couple of slides of kind of what I'm doing now, but it is kind of important to set the scene. So 23% of the world's energy is wasted through tribological contact. If you learn nothing else today, what is tribological contact? It's the study of wear, friction, and lubrication. So this is our kind of big kind of drive and mission for what we're doing with Tribosonics. And I think the other thing that I kind of say is I want to be a champion for women in technology. I'm leading the commercial vision for the business, and we're a forward-thinking, action-orientated company. And I think what's really exciting, you know, when I joined, the board was all men, which is fine, but they had a kind of new mission of how they were going to grow and scale the business. The time now, we've managed to secure some funding, and we've now got a 50% board, which, you know, in a tech engineering company is amazing. So what do? We use embedded sensing technology to transform components into an intelligent and efficient system. And if I was in the office, I would show you what one of these looks like, but I can't, but that's okay. And we do this in manufacturing, power generation and transportation. There's loads more I could say about it, but I want to kind of go through some of the highlights of what's happened in the last year and to really kind of cover, you know, some interesting points. So this was a jury prize win, an innovation day, if you like, in Paris. And we were sought out by a tech scout to pitch for a tier 1 automotive supplying company. And it was an innovation competition that really leveraged our exposure to the French industry corporates. And I think it's, you know, all these things, it's putting your company out there. You know, we're quite a small company from Sheffield, but we've got kind of big dreams and big ambitions, and we do work with a lot of big corporates. So we thought, yeah, we can go for this and do it. And we were successful, and that kind of led on to a development project with that company. One of the things we do in a company, and we've continued to do whilst we're in lockdown, is run ideas factories. And this is where the whole business gets split into teams, and we tackle either market, technology or business challenges. And we do it for 2 hours. And sometimes it could be some people in the lab, it could be looking at the market. And we look at also putting together innovation disclosure forms. So we have a big pipeline, a patent pipeline, kind of ready to go, and then we look at what the market pull is, and then we choose which ones we want to kind of invest in and take forward through to patents. One of the other things we do is we take our ideas factory on tour to different locations, and we kind of invite special guests to join us. So we've done some at the AMRC. This one was actually at our accountant's office, and it's a great engagement tool for staff and our ecosystem partners to really have a focused play session and really concentrate on some real life challenges, make prototypes and learn about new industries and tools. I will skip over that. I think one of the kind of final things is we started an investment journey probably about 8 months ago now. And we were successful in September to secure that from Mercia on the Northern Investment Powerhouse Fund. You know, when I started in the business, this about 18 months ago, this was one of our ambitions. We've changed our business model. We're looking how we want to kind of move forward. And one of the things we needed to do was kind of secure funding to accelerate that journey. I think what's really interesting from my perspective, I've come in as an engineer, but primarily my focus is on the commercial side, but it kind of gives me that base understanding of how we want to work as a business. I work with engineers, even though our chairperson, who's VP for Rolls-Royce, she's also an aerospace engineer as well. So it's kind of working together in this group to kind of make amazing things happen and to change the world. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm excited to kind of share that journey as well with you guys. I suppose just to finish off, I'd never applied for any competitions or awards for myself in the past. I'd always done it either for the project I was working on or other colleagues that I worked with to kind of champion them. This last 18 months is the first time that I've kind of done that. 2 of the applications that I put in, this was one of them. I got shortlisted, didn't win. And you think, oh, you know, it's should I do that? Why am I doing this? It takes a lot of time, usually weekend work to kind of make it happen. But I think it's really important to kind of have a bit of reflection on what you've been doing, you know, really kind of package up and look at how you kind of sell what you've done in the past and some of the projects you've done to kind of put that on a platform. It really opened up sort of new networks. And I'm proud to say I have won the Tech Women 100, so one of 100 women nationally as a tech female leader. So, you know, really proud of that. I didn't expect it at all, but it kind of does say you should really kind of put yourself out there for these sorts of things. There are a lot of competitions out there, and it's the ones that kind of really resonate with you are the ones that you probably should go for. So on that note, the journey's tough. Let's connect. And thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer kind of questions.
Thank you, Christina. I'm trying to find the clap. I'm trying to find the clap. I'm gonna clap. There you go. Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Christina. And I think just some things I want just to kind of sum up, which is very, very difficult because I think all your presentations have been fantastic. It is about that, again, a career is not a journey from A to B. It reminds me about the last speech that Steve Jobs said. I think he was an MIT, I can't remember, a big American university. He said his life started making sense when you connect the dots backwards, looking backwards rather than looking forward. When you start connecting the dots looking backwards, you realize that everything took you where you have to be right now, and that all those experiences were just, you were talking about embracing the fear to take the leap, where all those things like a roller coaster going down were necessary and were very important to where you are right now. And I think that's a very important message that I would like to take from today, from all the things that you were saying. The beauty about the journey is the unknown. And embracing that unknown, knowing that, you know, that net will appear again, like it appeared in the past, but we tend to forget that we do have a net always in the backpack, and it's always reusable. It's never, you know, once you throw it, you can use it again and again and again. I would love to be here all day. We are about to finish, and I would like you to ask, for those of you who want to ask more questions to our speakers, if you want to stay here because we're aiming to finish around 12 o'clock, to ask some more questions to Helen, Christina, and Jess, please do so. Stay here for a little bit more. I just want to share my screen for those of you who have to leave us at 12 o'clock. For some of the things that are coming with regard to this project that is sponsoring this event, we're going to have an e-learning platform soon. There are a lot of soft skills development modules. We were talking about how to develop confidence and problem solving with quizzes, activities. We are going to be asking all our speakers, if that's okay, to use your presentation as an OER resource for more women to see, and men as well, to see the journeys. And we're going to have as well our testimonials, not only from the UK, but from our female colleagues from Italy, Spain, Luxembourg, and Greece. We're going to have circles. So for those of you who want to develop, who are women in STEM, working in women in STEM, going back, or just at an entry level, the circles is a great way of helping increase confidence and self-reflection. I know Jess and Christina have all participated in circles in the past, and very, very interesting about how you have time to think about your thinking, because that's something that doesn't happen a lot. We don't have time to really reflect on our paradigms. Some events on Eventbrite for Innova, if you're interested. We have a whole range of things, from entrepreneurship to if you want to become a coach or a trainer. It doesn't matter what area you are and want to develop more skills as a coach. We have this training going on. These are all free because they are sponsored by the European Commission. We have some fascinating stories coming from entrepreneurs from international backgrounds like myself, who I'm originally from Mexico. We have some things, if COVID allows, to use theater for developing confidence. And for those of you working in teams, come along on the 18th of December, because we're going to test a lot of virtual team building activities that you can do when people are working remotely. Also, a call to ask you, if you were not born in the UK and you are working in science, engineering, and technology, STEAM, as well arts, because this project includes arts. Danny is pasting right now in the chat a Google form, if you can help us and be part of a focus group that is taking place next Tuesday, just for an hour, to hear your perspective about, you know, the challenges, things that might be there when you are not from that native country, and the challenges that we might need to address that can help us build then afterwards a confidence program. So I will like to also ask you to complete the evaluation form. Danny, if you can please be so kind to add in the chat the evaluation form for this program. Because it is funded by the European Commission, a very important aspect for us is obviously to collect your feedback. So we will very much appreciate if you can complete that evaluation form. Thank you, Danny, that you just added in the chat. Okay, so let's go to our mentee again. So if you go back to your phone, I'm just gonna try to share it again. There we go. Oh, I think some already people have already started answering. So in Mentee, you might find this question again. How did you find today's session and what did you enjoy the most?
Ooh.
And you can put as many things as you want to. So if you you press, yeah, great.
I've not used this before.
Okay, great. So a lot of things coming up now, listening to speakers, real stories. Of course, real stories is always so interesting and make us realize that it's not just what academia say or articles. Interesting, refreshing, good to connect with other women in STEM, absolutely. Thought-provoking, informative, reminded me that I'm not alone. That's so true. A lot of the things about like the imposter syndrome, a lot of the things we were talking today, we always think, is it only me? But when you hear other stories, you realize that it's part of the journey. I love Mentee, great too. Inspiring, motivating, hope. Yes, of course. Very good speakers. Thank you. Well moderated. Great to listen from women in STEM. Inspiring and motivating. I think inspiration, I would like just to finish with that phrase about inspiration and motivation. I have always said that entrepreneurship, leadership, anything can be a quite lonely experience because we tend to go out with the same people that already know us. So we start thinking that our story just ended there. So sharing the story, and I'm sure that might have happened to our speakers. When you share your story and you start just even presenting what you have done, that in itself, in self-efficacy in psychology, is the best way of improving confidence. Just to recap in all your achievements, that is something that I have seen that is part of a lot of training programs, just looking at your achievements and presenting. So I would like to thank a lot of our speakers. For those of you who have to leave us, thank you very much. If you can complete the evaluation form. But for those of you who can stay a little bit more, I'm opening the floor if you want to ask more questions to our speakers, or if our speakers want to highlight something else that made you think while you were listening to Christina.
Sorry, regarding the evaluation form, if I can just please add, I can see in the chat there were some messages that it was not working. I changed the permission now, so hopefully it works now. And sorry about this. Yeah, I can see that it's working. Thank you everyone.
Can you paste it again in the chat, Babette? Because I think it just went up in the chat. Some people might not be able to see it.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you. So any questions from the audience to the speakers? You can, if you want, you can just add it in the chat, or if you feel courageous enough to turn on your camera and ask us the question, that would be great. I think everybody is reflecting on or doing the evaluation form.
Everybody's filling the evaluation form.
I know, I can imagine. So, Christina, you were we were discussing after coffee break how to develop confidence skills. So, what has helped you in developing your confidence skills?
I think one of the biggest things for me is having a champion where you work. And if I look back at all the companies that I've worked at, then there has always been someone who I trust, you know, that I can tell them about my fears and issues, which you don't really want to do that to everybody, but someone who believes in you actually and says, you know, even when you're having your kind of low points, they kind of go, come on, you've got this, and I know you can do it, and you can, you know, here's some examples of stuff you've done well, and why don't you push yourself? You do need to be pushed, and things are uncomfortable if you want to kind of grow and move forward. but having that person who kind of believes in you is one of the biggest things that now I kind of reflect back on my career was the major thing for confidence. If you've got confidence, you can do anything. And I think, you know, the CEO that we have at our company, he's very kind of forthright and honest, and he's, which is great in a way. Sometimes it's hard to hear, but other times, you know, when he says something positive and supports you, you know that, you know, it's really coming from the heart, and he kind of he believes in me to do this job, even though some stuff's going to be difficult. So yeah, I think that was a major thing. There's lots of other things, but that's the thing that sticks out for me.
And something I have had in a lot of conferences, because of course I've been in this area about women in STEM for many, many years, is young girls coming, young women from schools, but mainly young women from university or studying university, going like, well, nobody supports me. My parents didn't want me to study engineering. My parents think, or my friends, my girlfriends think that, why am I doing this? What advice would you say to them, or what would you tell them?
I think for me it's about parents actually. I think we've got a lot of work to do. We spend a lot of time focusing on kids and changing their minds. Actually, what we need to be doing is changing a generation of parents who have equally not had the exposure to science and technology that some of us have had. And I think that really has to be a driver to then make them feel. We've got to remember that it's like well over somewhere near 80%, isn't it, or something, that of working parents in the UK are not in a STEM profession. So we've got to remember that there's a lot of people who know nothing about it, so can't advise their children about whether it's good or not, and only see images of hard hats and overalls and things like that they see portrayed on the TV. So we've got a lot of work to do to change parents' minds.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because if I think back to my parents, they weren't in the STEM area at all. They both hadn't kind of fit. One hadn't gone to university at all. The other one hadn't finished. My mum didn't finish. She went to uni in Egypt, so it was a different kind of language. So, you know, she had her own challenges there. But, you know, they hadn't even gone to university. But what I did have was support. My mum knew I needed to go to university, so she had the aspiration. It is about aspirations as well, because I see it in some of the village. I live out in a village, and you know, the majority of my cohort of kind of other mums, there's not that many who've been to university. There's definitely no other engineers or kind of scientists or anything like that. So you think, well, what is the aspiration, and what are the role models that are out there? But you know, my mum was just wanting me to go to university. She wasn't too bothered as long as I did a formal subject. So engineering kind of ticked that box. If I wanted to do art, that was another issue. So it's kind of having that kind of support to say, yes, you're going to university, but she was driving that. So I knew I could go to uni and have that support. But I know even that's a barrier for a lot of people to even get that far, and they've got to fight for it. Never mind kind of going into industry and then fighting your way as a female. That's just a whole nother kind of game. But I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. Raising aspirations, showing people what this role's are all about, and how exciting it can be, and showing that it is a possible path. I still don't know all the paths for engineering, and we're quite experienced now. There'll be loads of stuff. There'll be jobs that don't exist now in 10 to 15 years. So it's kind of always kind of learning, always kind of looking at what can come up in the future.
Quite a few people asked in the chat about working with schools, and had we done any work with schools. And one of the things I found with working with schools in the past, and a lot of the visits I did to schools, was through the YSET programme that Marina was talking about earlier. Primary school girls seemed quite switched on to it, interested in science and engineering and technology, and something seems to happen around the age of about 9 or 10. And then when they get to secondary school, the mindset has shifted somehow. And I did a session at a secondary school in Sheffield, in a very working class part of Sheffield, and I had a session with sort of 20 or so girls, and there seemed to be a general sort of feeling of sort of three different areas, that three different options that they had, and that was childcare, animal care, or beauty. And it was, when you asked all of them, that all of their career aspirations seemed to fit into one of those three pockets. It was just really, really strange. And if you'd have gone to those same kids, I think maybe 3 years earlier, when they were still at primary school, I think they'd have had very, very different ideas. So I think there's some sort of switch in girls that we're missing.
Definitely, I would agree with you on that, Jessica. I think one of the biggest problems we face is the curriculum in terms of what's being taught in our schools, particularly in the UK. I'd love to hear from others who are on the call today about what it might be like in other countries. But certainly in the UK, the science curriculum becomes so bland at the point where you go into secondary school that it turns many people off, and many young girls off. And that's often, as I mentioned in my speech, about it being innovative and creative. You know, we've got to get that across. You know, I'd never heard of healthcare engineering when I was, 10, 11, 12. If I'd have known that that the engineers designed medical devices and made sure people, lived healthier lives, I would have jumped to that opportunity. But there was nothing there to tell me about those things. So I think we have a duty to go out and be able to talk about the creativity around science and engineering, and enable those young girls, like you said, to feel switched on by science and not turned off by a very bland curriculum, which unfortunately doesn't inspire them to take up the subjects. And Christina, I'm like you, sort of, my dad's view of things was he needed me to get out of the village. He wanted to inspire me. He had no formal education. He left school at 14. He went to work in the pit. That was his job, as many men of his age. He's 82 now, so you can gain from that what you will. But he knew that education was key, and I think that is, again, something that whether you're just starting your STEM career, whether you're embedded in your STEM career, or you're coming towards the end, it's all about making sure that these people who are coming into the profession have the right education, and we have a duty of care to enable that. And I think that's very important.
And certainly you have done that today by giving your time, by preparing your presentations, that I know you're so busy on top of everything you are doing. And we'll make sure that this presentation can be shared amongst a lot of schools and a lot about other women that are champions, and men. And I have to say that involving men is as important as involving women, because it's a cultural thing. The other day, my son surprised me by buying a book that is called Best or Top Women in History, or Best Women in History. And he started reading the introduction and said, this book is dedicated to all the for all young girls. And he put the book down and goes like, oh, it's not for me. And that is so important. So we are about to write to the publisher to say, no, it's not only girls, it's also boys, because he might be the next champion of somebody that can mentor somebody, or he might be the one that can recruit other women if he decides to run an engineering company, or to champion his own daughters or partner. So important that we make this conversation not only about women, but a cultural conversation where we can improve lives and, like you said, Helen, be excellent to each other. So thank you very much to all our speakers, to some of you joining us from abroad, like Rana. I know that you didn't have to travel, but still you have to give your time when it's lunchtime. Thank you very much, and hope to see you again very soon in another interesting conversation. Hopefully in 2 years, I'm sure your stories would have changed a lot and show us that it's definitely not a road from A to B, but definitely a roller coaster. So thank you very much to all of you, and hope to see you very soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.